Chapter 986, The Infectiousness of Parasitizing.
So Mr. Fool also has authority in the aspect of concealment.
Leonard came to a realization as he understood why Old Man had specially mentioned the need for the blessings of concealment. Without waiting for his reply, Klein added,
In addition, tell Zoroast that Amon might very well know that there's a marauder pathway angel in the vicinity of Balkland Street.
This. Leonard's pupils dilated as he blurted out,
How would he know that?
It's not convenient to tell you why.
Klein mumbled inwardly before replying rather sternly.
It's not like I'm Amon.
Which of his actions or words made you come to this conclusion?
Leonard asked subconsciously.
No, it's me who told him.
Klein chuckled as a response.
Indeed. No problem. I'll inform Old Man of this.
Leonard nodded and said. He paused for a moment before asking,
Are you waiting for him to give a detailed plan?
Klein tersely acknowledged.
When it comes to the knowledge of Amon and the marauder pathway, few are better than him.
Having said that, Klein, who had determined that Amon wouldn't come to Balkland Street any time soon, calmly added,
There's no need to be in a rush to respond. Give me the feedback at tomorrow's tarot gathering.
From the looks of it, things haven't reached a critical stage yet.
Leonard figured out the most important information from Klein's words. He nodded slightly and said,
All right, we will discuss this in detail at tomorrow's tarot gathering.
After settling this matter, Klein immediately got up and bowed in the direction of the door of light.
Mr. Fool, we are done.
Leonard stood up, but before he could do anything, his vision became a blur as the crimson stellar light inundated him. When he snapped awake, he found himself in the sparse forest on the outskirts of Northborough. Zoroast's slightly aged voice sounded.
Is there anything you wish to tell me?
Leonard cleared his throat and said,
Klein told me that he's a blessed of concealment. He can attempt to pray for help.
Blessed of concealment. Indeed.
Pelez sighed and said,
Tell him that as long as he can really gain the blessings of concealment, I'm willing to provide help when it comes to dealing with Amon and finding all his avatars hiding in Backland.
Leonard wasn't surprised by this answer as he chuckled.
Old Man, you don't sound as weak as you make yourself out to be.
Zoroast chuckled without a hint of anger in his tone.
Didn't you read through Roselle's quotes? I recall that there's a saying that a starving camel is still bigger than a horse.
That will depend on the breed of horse and camel.
Leonard retorted habitually, before asking,
Old Man, how should we deal with Amon? Do you plan on using yourself as bait?
Pelez snapped back.
Ahem. If that were the case, what we'll be facing will be Amon's actual body and not his avatars. When that happens, there's a high chance that it will instigate a deities battle. I might still have a chance of escaping. As for you, perhaps you will return to Evernight's tenebrous heaven.
Pause.
Leonard could only reply with a chortle. Zoroast continued.
Unlike the similar powers of other pathways, Amon's avatars can rapidly strengthen himself by absorbing the beyonder characteristics of the marauder pathway, thereby splitting even more worms of time, allowing him to parasitize different creatures. As long as there's enough beyonder characteristics, this process can keep happening.
Isn't this like the spread of a plague?
Leonard felt a chill run down his back once again. If one had enough beyonder characteristics of the marauder pathway, Amon's avatars could go from parasitizing one person to the entire city.
Pretty much.
Zoroast affirmed Leonard's guess and sighed.
To deal with Amon, this is the only way to take action. Using marauder pathway beyonder characteristics at the demigod level to bait him out. As long as you successfully finish off one of his avatars, there are ways to seek out and eliminate the rest. However, Amon is a master of deceit. We need to be careful. Otherwise, it might appear like we are baiting him, but in actual fact, he is baiting you. On this matter, concealment is of utmost importance.
I understand.
Leonard sighed and turned to ask.
How strong can Amon's avatar be?
Palez Zoroast fell silent for a few seconds as though in recollection. Finally, he said,
In theory, his strongest avatar can reach the equivalent of a sequence 1, but it's almost impossible for him to do so. This will make his mental state unstable and show signs of losing control. Typically, one of his avatars is a worm of time, each starting off as a weak sequence 4. However, each possesses the trait of an angel capable of shattering beyond their characteristics. By absorbing sufficient amounts of marauder pathway beyond their characteristics, such an avatar can reach a level equivalent to a sequence 2. However, Amon seldom does so. His avatars will automatically fracture and create even more avatars. Furthermore, with the actual situation in Backland, it's very difficult for him to gather enough beyonder characteristics that can raise his avatar to sequence 2.
Leonard thought carefully for a moment before asking,
So, we will be facing a group of Amons. Amongst them, a majority have the strength of a weak sequence 4, with a minority having the normal standards of a sequence 4, while an extremely small minority reaches sequence 3.
With Amon's style, it's likely the case. However, you have to remember that Amon is good at deceit.
Palez Zoroast warned.
In addition, based on the time since Amon's avatar arrived in Backland, the number of marauder pathway beyonder characteristics he has gathered to date can't be too much. After all, this is Backland. Also, if the situation isn't right, his avatars will use the strongest one as the center, and automatically gather together to achieve an elevation in strength. The most important matter when dealing with Amon is to not let matters develop to this stage. Otherwise, there's no stopping Amon from escaping, even if an angel of the concealment domain arrives.
It's truly difficult to deal with him. Besides, it's just an avatar he randomly threw out to develop themselves, as expected of a king of angels.
After Leonard made a poignant sigh, he suddenly recalled Klein's reminder and hurriedly said,
The Angel of Time has apparently already locked onto a marauder pathway demigod. Klein said that he encountered Amon while pursuing the demigod. Also, Amon seems to know that there might be a marauder pathway angel hidden in the region around Bulklin Street.
Palez Zoroast fell silent once again, remaining that way for a pretty long period of time. After a while, with Leonard unable to stop himself from prodding for a response, Palez Zoroast lamented with a sigh.
Why is your former colleague, as troublesome as you?
What?
Leonard wore a blank look. Palez Zoroast said in a peeved manner.
The reason why Amon knows that there's a marauder pathway angel around Bulklin Street is likely due to him.
Old man, you have the ability to decrypt.
Leonard asked in puzzlement. Palez harumphed.
I was using my brain. Otherwise, why do you think there's the prefix of Bulklin Street?
That's true. Anything that has to do with Bulklin Street can't avoid Dwayne Dantes. Could it be some problem that fellow, Klein, created?
Only then did Leonard come to a realization. At this moment, Palez sighed.
Thankfully, he only said an angel and not my name. Otherwise, I suggest that we immediately leave Backland. Brr. Tell him that there are currently 2 solutions. Brr. First, it's to seek out a Grade 1 sealed artifact of the Marauder Pathway, or find a demigod of the Marauder Pathway. Using them, we design a trap. This entire process requires the blessings of concealment. Furthermore, it needs to be natural, reasonable, normal, and in no way incur suspicion. Second, wait for Amon to enter Bulklin Street. He might do a combination of replacing someone's identity and infiltrating through the air. Therefore, your former colleague needs to see through the grafting of fate or notice the abnormalities in the microbes. Otherwise, no matter what plans are employed, it will simply be feeding Amon.
Leonard's eyelid twitched when he heard that as he solemnly nodded.
I'll discuss these matters with him tomorrow afternoon.
All right.
Palez Zoroast sighed and said,
Also, if all the Amon avatars in Backland can be eliminated, most of the worms of time left behind will belong to me.
As a form of replenishing himself. It's no wonder old man is willing to take the risk.
Leonard asked in enlightenment.
Do those worms of time have the beyonder characteristics of the marauder pathway?
It might be the case in my hands, but not necessarily for others.
Palais explained simply.
The worms of time left when Amon's avatars die will indeed contain a sufficient amount of beyonder characteristics in the beginning, but they will quickly deplete and return to the main body. The corresponding power is needed to prevent this phenomenon from happening.
Leonard first nodded before asking in confusion.
Why was the luck siphon charms, made from the worms of time, so powerful?
Palais instantly scoffed.
Have you forgotten what the essence of the charm is? Its essence is the power obtained from a high-level existence. It then uses a material that can handle this power, as well as the powers obtained from the corresponding symbols, to stabilize it. The worm of time's role is to be a unique vessel. If the level is high enough, its essence is compatible, and there is sufficient spirituality, the requirements will be met.
Therefore, the power of the luck siphon charm actually comes from Mr. Fool.
Leonard asked in thought. Palais Zoroast chuckled and said,
Yes, you can try praying to Amen as well, and use his power to create luck siphon charms. Of course, the uniqueness of the vessel material will also affect the effects of the final product. In other words, different special materials will lead to different characteristics and power based on the response. Charms are a very profound and complicated piece of knowledge. It's not something that can be completely grasped by having some cursory education. You have to put more effort into it.
Leonard immediately felt somewhat ashamed. On Monday afternoon, using the powers of the mysterious space above the gray fog to check on Hazel's family to confirm that there weren't any problems, in the meantime, Klein patiently waited for the convening of the tarot gathering. Dark red beams shot up in the ancient palace before gradually calming down. Without a pause, Audrey got up and bowed towards the end of the long modeled table.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fool Tilda.
Chapter 987, Warehouse Clearance. After the greetings, everyone took their seats. Audrey swept her gaze across the third card of blasphemy placed beside Mr. Fool's right hand. She suddenly came to a realization that she had forgotten to obtain Roselle's diary entries from the psychology alchemists this week.
I've been caught up with the problem with Havian rhombus all week.
Audrey, who felt that she had already brightened up, instantly felt a little melancholic. At this moment, Kalia had looked towards the seat of honor at the end of the long modeled table. She bowed her head and said,
Honorable Mr. Fool, I haven't received any Roselle diary entries this week as well.
Queen Mystic hasn't provided any of the Emperor's diary entries for 2 consecutive weeks. Did something happen?
Leisurely sitting in his high back chair, the Fool Klein felt somewhat puzzled, as he couldn't help but have pessimistic thoughts. However, he swiftly denied this possibility because Ma'am Hermit didn't show any anxiety or concern.
With the way Admiral Stars presents herself as a fledgling in need of her mother in the dream world in the ruins of the Battle of God, she definitely wouldn't be this calm if Queen Mystic doesn't reply to her for 2 consecutive weeks. Her anxiety might even prompt her to seek the Fool's help. That also means that she has received a reply from Bernadette in the past 2 weeks, but none of Roselle's diary entries were provided.
Klein nodded gently and replied. Catalea calmly.
No hurry.
After saying that, his thoughts raced as he began analyzing the reason for Bernadette's actions. First, Klein eliminated the possibility that she no longer had any more Roselle diary entries. Combining the frequency at which the Emperor wrote diary entries, he surmised that the compiled diary would exceed 10 standard books. Even if Bernadette only had a third of that, she was definitely capable of producing 1 or 2 books. In addition, the diary entries she had previously provided were just a tiny minority which touched on crucial intelligence. Second, Klein didn't believe that Queen Mystic had gained the entire truth from the answers he had given. Finally, he was also certain that she couldn't decipher the simplified Chinese she had in hand from the tidbits of feedback she received. After all, he didn't give a detailed translation but vague answers comprising of a few words. Combining all 3 points, he suspected if the diary entries Bernadette planned on providing next would be even more important. They were more key and pointed to a certain secret or extremely special, questions that made one unsure if they wanted to know the answer. Thus, this Queen Mystic was presently in a dilemma.
It's likely the case. I wonder what the Emperor will write about. Besides, how is Bernadette able to know the importance of the entry? I should remember to get Ma'am Hermit to pass on my requests.
While in thought, Alger had already turned to look at Leonard.
I apologize. There's still no news of mystical items that meet your request at the moment.
That's very normal. That's right. Mystical items from sequence 5 and 6 aren't common to begin with.
Leonard nodded in understanding. He was originally sitting very straight, but when he found that the moon and the magician weren't so uptight, he also relaxed, relieving the straightening of his back. Upon seeing this, Klein controlled the world German sparrow and said with a hoarse voice,
I have a mystical item that suits your requests in various aspects. It's just that it has quite a number of negative effects that make it difficult to avoid. Do you want to consider it?
He was referring to the word of the sea. Klein had never had the intention of selling this item that almost required sealing to Leonard, as he felt that his dear poet friend couldn't withstand the negative effects of word of the sea. The belting of songs that didn't discriminate between ally or foe, the trait of tripping the wielder, or the flaw of being prone to lightning strikes weren't easily avoided. Klein was only able to use it by teaching the word of the sea above the gray fog a good lesson, and having Winner Inuni wield it to not be affected. He had even converted the flaws into something that could aid him. However, after considering how Leonard had a Sequence 1 Marauder Pathway angel parasitizing him, Klein had the feeling that Leonard might have the means to resolve the problem. Therefore, he ultimately made an inquiry.
Oh, tell me about it.
Leonard believed that Klein wouldn't scam him, so he expressed his intentions of getting to know the exact situation. The world German sparrow glanced at the hanged man and said slowly,
It can release lightning on a target.
He roughly described the beyonder powers of the word of the sea and the negative effects, leaving Leonard somewhat enticed despite frowning.
It can actually be used as a staff to allow me to fly. Even at Sequence 5 Spirit Warlock, I'll need to seek out a suitable spirit before I can fly. Besides, the offensive strength really is formidable. There are quite a number of traits, but the 3 negative effects are quite terrifying. I'll return to ask Old Man to see if he has any means to reduce the negative effects.
Leonard pondered for a few seconds before saying,
I'll take some time to consider it. How about I give you an answer next week?
No problem.
The world German sparrow replied without any hint of surprise. As for the other members, even if they were interested in the beginning, all of them gave up the thought of inquiring about the price once they heard the negative effects that the word of the sea possessed. At this moment, the fool Klein's mind was focused on another matter. He was wondering if he should take this opportunity to do a warehouse clearance sale. He had advanced to Sequence 4, and after becoming a demigod, many of the items and characteristics he had before were no longer of much use.
I can keep Creeping Hunger. I should keep it just for traveling alone. In addition, it can graze 1 Sequence 4 saint. It has room for further growth. Furthermore, the combination of the various beyonder powers it has is pretty good. The value of Death Knell is no longer that great, but after activating lethal attack mode, the damage it does on a fixed target exceeds that of air cannon. At the very least, I can still use it at Sequence 4. Yes, it also has room for growth.
The first 2 items that surfaced in Klein's mind were the 2 items he frequently used. From his point of view, as long as he obtained more powerful bullets, he could produce terrifying effects with Death Knell. The only problem was that such bullets were equivalent to high-level charms, nothing that could be easily found. Even if he sought out the materials to make them himself, he had to consider the chances of success when praying to some high-level existence, or if it was possible for there to be a backlash. On this aspect, Klein came up with a few plans. Pray to the goddess, request Snake of Mercury Will Septon to provide help. Go through Leonard to get Pallas Zoroast's help. Use the powers of the mysterious space above the gray fog, and also get Leonard to make a trip back to Tingen under the guise of a mission, so as to steal some of the powers of the Eternal Blazing Sun's divine blood from 30782, the mutated Sun Sacred Emblem.
Flaring sun bullets are definitely the nemesis of creatures like evil spirits. I have some idea on how to use the materials via borrowing the power of the mysterious space above the gray fog. Amon's Worms of Time can be used to make Luck-siphon charms. My Worms of Spirit can also be made into Beyonder bullets. As for how it can be done, I'll need to ask Pallas Zoroast.
Klein began anticipating the upcoming chat with Leonard. Worm of Spirit was the name he gave to those transparent maggots. Following that, he began considering the other items and characteristics.
Sunbrooch. I currently lack such powers and items. Although I can use the control over spirit body threads to deal with evil spirits, I can keep it and allow my paper angel to have one more additional change. Besides, I can also lend it to Danitz from time to time. Flower of Blood? I can't sell it. The Tarot Club doesn't have any Aurora Order members. I'll continue letting my marionette use it. Having one additional life is one additional hope. Green Essence. I can sell this. I can transfer my ailments already. Creeping Hunger also has a doctor grazed. Murloc Cufflink. There's no need for this either. If I have a sudden need for its powers, I can transform into a huge fish. And in the long term, I can just head above the gray fog to use Sea God's Scepter to augment myself with the effects. Broken Finger. I wonder if anyone would want it. Besides, I haven't fully investigated why the rat demigod was sealed. It might be of use. I have 1 purifying bullet, 6 demon hunting bullets, and 2 exorcism bullets left. I'll just randomly use them. There's no need for me to sell them. Biological poison bottle. Sigh, I haven't been able to sell it all this time. Blatherer's Aura. This can be used to make charms or bullets. I'll temporarily not sell it. But herein lies the problem. Am I to pray to the dark side of the universe? That can be struck off the list of options. I'll see if there are any replacement plans in the future. An Interrogator Beyonder characteristic. A Lunatic Beyonder characteristic. 15 ml of 1,000-faced hunter's blood. 40 grams of Spirit World Plunderer powder. An eyeball of a 6-winged gargoyle. Tarot Club members have no need for these. I might be able to reward the believers of Sea God or the resistance in Rorstead Archipelago.
As these thoughts flashed across his mind, Klein quickly made a decision. As for items which were at least at the demigod level, such as the Sea God Scepter, Grozel's Travels, the Giant King's Court Key, he didn't consider selling them. Then, he made the World Gehrman Sparrow say,
I have 2 mystical items for sale. Their levels are relatively low.
A low level doesn't mean it's useless. Many low sequence Beyonders' powers can even turn the tides of battles involving sequence 5 Beyonders. I'm rather interested in knowing the detailed situation of those 2 mystical items.
Klein nodded gently and described the uses and flaws of Murloc Cufflink and Green Essence. After he was done, he said,
Murloc Cufflink for 500 pounds. Green Essence for 1,000 pounds.
Just as he said that, Audrey raised her arm.
I wish to buy the Murloc Cufflink.
She actually wished to say that she wanted both. After all, the 2 mystical items have extremely minor negative side effects. However, considering how others might have their needs, she found it inappropriate for her to take them all. Audrey finally decided to only take Murloc Cufflink. This could provide her a layer of illusory scales, preventing her from being easily caught. And more importantly, she didn't know how to swim. This could effectively make up for her weakness. As for the heat and the dry weather easily causing fatigue, she wasn't too worried about it. This was because, be it in Eastchester County or Backland, the temperature seldom exceeded 30 degrees Celsius. The humidity was also rather high. Seeing Miss Justice having her eyes on Murloc Cufflink, the other members wisely gave up without raising the price, allowing the trade to quickly come to an end. Following that, Alger bought the Green Essence ring. To him, although the water domain had certain restorative spells, they were inferior to a dedicated item. As a Beyonder who often had to engage in melee battles, it was of great importance. As for attracting mosquitoes, Alger wasn't bothered. This was because he had illusory scales beneath his skin, preventing him from being afraid of bites. After the transaction segment came to an end, Emlyn cleared his throat and asked a question. Chapter 988, Joint Operation, backquote. Emlyn couldn't help but clasp his hands together, lift up his chin, and say to Miss Magician diagonally opposite him, backquote,
I've already confirmed that the ancient abandoned castle in Delaire Forest is an internal test that the Sanguine had given me, having hidden the key situation. Backquote.
With that said, he felt as though a weight had been lifted off his chest. He no longer felt as hesitant, embarrassed, due to the difficult situation he was in. He surveyed the area and looked for Ma'am Hermit's and Mr. Hangman's reaction. He realized that they appeared to have expected it, showing no signs of surprise. Backquote. From the looks of it, they had already an idea when Miss Magician mentioned the problem with the intel. Backquote. Emlyn nodded his head in secret and added before Miss Magician replied, backquote,
I'm very sorry. I will refund you the £300 for the intel fee. In addition, I'll pay you another £300. Also, I will punish the Sanguine who deliberately omitted information. Backquote.
Although Mr. Moon always wears a proud demeanor, he's rather sincere when a mistake has been made. He didn't find an excuse to push the blame onto, backquote.
However, I've already obtained the ancient wraith's cursed item and remnant spirituality, so the matter is already over. He didn't deliberately wish to cause harm to me and Shio. There's no need for me to get so much compensation. Backquote.
Forrest remembered Gio's exhortations. Without looking at her, she said, backquote,
It's only a matter of oversight. There's no need for compensation. Just refunding me for the intel fee is sufficient. Backquote.
Just as she said that, she suddenly thought of something. Since the ancient abandoned castle was a test of the Sanguine, didn't that mean that Zio and herself had been targeted by the Sanguine, backquote? Fours finally couldn't hold back as she turned to glance at Zio. She found misjudgment shaking her head slightly, indicating that she hadn't discovered anyone monitoring them, backquote.
This. Backquote.
Fours felt puzzled and found it inexplicable. She then allowed her thoughts to wander as she recalled the situation back then. Backquote.
We did the exploration only after quite a while. The Sanguine had already lost their patience by then. The boss of the town's inn knew of the ancient abandoned castle. He was a Sanguine in disguise. That's not right. Many of the locals knew of this matter. However, that place was too far away and there wasn't anything of value left inside. That's why, unless one was out hunting, people usually wouldn't head in that direction. That's not right. If the ancient abandoned castle were that dangerous, why are the people who use it for shelter from the rain completely fine? They only describe it as creepy and a little scary. Yes, the Sanguine would usually seal off the passage that heads underground. They opened it for the test. This means that there was some form of monitoring. Because the ancient castle is too dangerous, the monitoring was done outside the forest and not inside. As Tio and I got lost, we circled around the monitors and weren't detected. Mr. Fool didn't mention anything about it. It's probably not a huge problem. More attention needs to be taken when I return. Backquote.
As Force's thoughts raced, Emlyn said after some pondering, backquote.
Okay, backquote.
He didn't insist on additional compensation, because he believed that the best form of compensation was to punish Ernest Boyar instead of giving money. Then he waited for Miss Magician to ask about the punishment, hoping that he could take the opportunity to make an inquiry to the other Tarot Club members. He wanted to see if he could get any good suggestions. Backquote. As for Fours, upon considering that it was an internal matter for the Sanguine, and that although she was a victim, Mr. Moon hadn't offered a plan for action, she decided not to press further in consideration for his feelings. Instead, she decided to wait for the conclusion to see if it was satisfactory. Backquote. The palace that looked like a giant's residence turned silent as the mood turned odd. Back quote. Audrey looked opposite her and glanced to the side. Pursing her lips, she curiously asked back quote.
Mr. Moon, how do you plan on punishing that sanguine? Back quote.
Phew. Emlyn silently exhaled as he subconsciously looked at the world. Back quote.
He did so because of orders from the higher-ups. I believe that this mistake isn't something that deserves payment with his life. Back quote.
In between the lines, Emlyn was implying that Mr. World didn't need to intervene in this matter. There was no need to escalate the matter. Back quote. Seeing the world having no objections, Emlyn cast his gaze forward. Back quote.
I plan on leading that sanguine to a particular cathedral of the Church of Earth Mother in Backland. Back quote.
Having participated in so many tarot gatherings, even if he couldn't be concerned about certain details, he knew the requirement of hiding matters regarding himself in the real world. Therefore, he didn't mention the Harvest Church. Back quote.
The Church of Earth Mother only has one cathedral in all of Backland. That's the Harvest Church. The rest are all in the outskirts and surroundings villages. Back quote.
Leonard held back his laughter as he looked up at the dome above. Back quote.
You wish to have the Beyonders of the Church of Earth Mother purify that sanguine? Back quote.
Fours blurted out in surprise. From her point of view, this was no different from directly killing the person in question. Back quote.
Back quote.
Emlyn was momentarily at a loss for words. Back quote. At that moment, Kalea interrupted. Back quote.
The Church of Earth Mother has the habit of inducting the sanguine into the church, converting their faith, and making them priests or bishops. Back quote.
I see. Back quote.
With thoughts in mind, Audrey glanced at Mr. Moon without letting him notice it. Back quote.
Getting that sanguine to become a member of the clergyman, to pray daily at the cathedral and do voluntary work, so as to cleanse the heart. He would be stuck doing this for a very long period of time. Mr. Moon's plan for punishment is really vicious. However, I like it. That fellow nearly made me and Sio turn into ancient wraiths due to the corruptive powers behind the door. Back quote.
Fours instantly felt her interest piqued as she asked back quote.
Mr. Moon, how do you plan on luring the sanguine into the Cathedral of Earth Mother? Have you worked out a plan? Perhaps I can provide some help. You have to be careful. You mustn't enter the Cathedral of Earth Mother in order to punish him. That way, the only thing you can do is to request Mr. Fool for help. Back quote.
After saying that, Fours silently added. Back quote.
Of course, that might be something Mr. Fool wishes to happen, allowing him to have someone on the inside of the Church of Earth Mother. Back quote.
Upon hearing that, Leonard nearly laughed out. He was extremely certain that Mr. Moon was the Harvest Church's Emlyn White. Clearly, this sanguine was already a priest of Earth Mother. Back quote.
This is slightly akin to a drowning person pulling others in. Back quote.
Leonard held back his laughter, glanced at the world, and he found that his former colleague didn't seem perturbed. He appeared extremely somber. Back quote.
Is this the power of a clown, or is it a state that Klein is accustomed to? Back quote.
At the end of the long model table, the fool Klein nearly covered his mouth. Back quote.
He never expected Emlyn to be so creative. This was a little like multi-level marketing, yet it's a little different. After all, it's not necessarily a good thing for Emlyn to know of that. Back quote.
Klein leaned back into his chair as he awaited the development with piqued interest. He had always kept in mind Miss Justice's advice during his last treatment session about not always wearing a thick mask. He tried his best to do so when opportunities arose so as to maintain a healthy mental state. Back quote. Upon hearing Miss Magician's words of concern, Emlyn felt even more awkward because he went to the Cathedral of Earth Mother several times a day on a daily basis. He felt uncomfortable even if he skipped the weekends. Back quote. He cleared his throat and said back quote.
I temporarily do not have a thought-out plan. I wish to get some suggestions from all of you. Yes, I hope that we do not have too intense a battle. It's difficult to ensure that the matter doesn't escalate, and I also do not wish for my identity to be directly exposed. Miss Magician, there are no problems regarding your participation, but we will absolutely not be meeting each other. Back quote.
His idea of not directly exposing his identity meant that he didn't mind that Ernest Boyar and the other Sanguine could guess that he did it. It was a way to instill shock and awe in them, but it was best that there wasn't any obvious evidence. Back quote. Forrest tersely answered as she mimicked the other experienced members of the Tarot Club. Back quote.
First, you need to tell us what sequence that Sanguine is roughly at and what he's good at. Back quote.
Emlyn was already prepared as he answered back quote.
It's equivalent to sequence 5. He's quite experienced and is good at creating the effects of the full moon. Back quote.
Effects of the full moon. Back quote.
Forrest was taken aback as she turned to gape, but was unable to say a word. Back quote. After Emlyn finished the introduction, Forrest said with a hollow chuckle, back quote,
I recall that I have other matters to tend to. It might not be convenient for me to participate in this matter. Back quote.
When in a state similar to the full moon, she would hear Mr. Door's ravings, and this meant that she would instantly be heavily injured by the target, losing all her combat strength. Back quote. Emlyn frowned slightly, displeased with Miss Magician's sudden change in attitude. Back quote. At this moment, Shio, who had been listening silently, said, back quote,
I can participate, I just need a portion of the spoils. Back quote.
Miss Judgment's tone is very firm. It's like she wants to exact vengeance. Back quote.
Emlyn mumbled silently to himself and glanced at Ma'am Hermit and Mr. Hanged Man, only to discover that they temporarily had no intention of speaking. It appeared as though they wished to observe what kind of plan the Backlund members of the Tarot Club could come up with. Back quote. As this involved her friends and how it could be the first mission that the Tarot Club members would participate in at the same time, Audrey was rather intrigued. After some observation, she said in deliberation, back quote,
I can hypnotize that Sanguine, allowing him to enter the Cathedral of Earth Mother himself. However, to not expose ourselves, and to ensure a high chance of success, it's best that he's in a lost or half-dazed state while I hypnotize him. Mr. Moon, can you do that? Back quote.
Emlyn was summarizing his powers and items to consider a solution when Leonard suddenly laughed. Back quote.
That's simple, but I'll only be responsible for making that Sanguine unconscious. Of course, the premise is that there's sufficient intel, and it depends on how we go about taking action. Back quote.
Just as he said that, Zio nodded and said, back quote,
I'm good at tracking and investigation. You can leave intel matters to me. All right. First, Mr. Moon will have to inform me of that Sanguine's name, address, and appearance. Back quote.
All right. Back quote.
Emlyn heaved a sigh of relief before saying, in a somewhat lost manner, back quote,
Then what's my part in all of this? Also, what kind of payment do you want? Back quote.
Chapter 989, Mentor Alger. Upon hearing the Moon's question, the rest of the Tarot Club members realized that the main instigator for the punishment had ended up with nothing to do. According to the established plan, all he needed to do was provide the name, address, and appearance before waiting for the outcome. Miss Judgment was in charge of tracking and investigations to figure out the target's patterns. Miss Justice and Mr. Star would then choose a suitable location based on the feedback before Mr. Star threw the Sanguine into an unconscious state without attracting any attention. Miss Justice would then take this opportunity to complete a hypnotism act and make the target proceed to the predetermined location. In this entire process, there was nothing for the Moon. Audrey deliberated and said,
Mr. Moon, what you need to do is to ensure that the hypnotized Sanguine doesn't encounter any accidents on the way to the cathedral without him struggling or being rescued.
Upon saying that, Audrey suddenly realized a problem in the plan as she hurriedly added,
If that Sanguine is extremely resistant towards the Church of Mother Earth, the hypnotic effects wouldn't be as effective. Therefore, I plan on avoiding this point if possible. I will imbue in him the thought of nabbing some target he hates, so that he wouldn't realize that he's entering the intended cathedral during the pursuit. How about letting you be the target of his hatred? This will require you to be able to ensure your own safety while maintaining a distance without being caught.
It's not a problem.
Emlyn answered after some thought. With Duke Ulmer removing the mental corruption of the Sequence 5 artificial vampire Beyonder characteristic, Emlyn just needed to wait till a full moon to become a Viscount. That would place him equal to Ernest Boyar. And this opportunity was available next week. When that happened, he didn't believe that he would be caught up to by a Viscount just like him when he was equipped with the Ancestor's Ring.
If it really won't work, I can borrow Miss Magician's spellbook. I recall that there are powers in the wind domain.
Emlyn was rather confident. By the side, Leonard felt a baffling sense of horror when he heard the conversation between Miss Justice and Mr. Moon. To him, no matter how terrifying a head-on battle was, it was nothing compared to the horror of doing something that went against his own will without him realizing it. He paused for a moment and replied to the second problem that Emlyn had raised.
My payment is the same as misjudgment. I want a portion of the spoils.
To Leonard, this entire matter required him to determine the time and location to pull the target into a dream before he left. He didn't need to care if the operation was successful or if any accidents cropped up. It was as simple as heading to a coffee shop to order a cup of Desi coffee. The only thing that needed him to take into account was to not expose himself. Therefore, he couldn't bring himself to ask for an advanced payment, planning to obtain a cut from the final spoils of war. In addition, he believed that this was a necessary thing to do in order to fully blend in with the Tarot Club. He didn't need to nitpick on such matters. Audrey turned her head and glanced at Geo before retracting her gaze. Revealing a smile, she said,
My request is the same as Mr. Starr and Misjudgment. I'll take a quarter of the spoils of war.
In fact, she wasn't insistent on getting payment because she believed that the Sanguine had bullied a Tarot Club member and her two friends. Punishing him was something she expected of herself. The reason why she took a portion of the spoils of war was to take into account Mr. Moon's feelings. She was afraid that her voluntary help would leave the prideful Sanguine embarrassed and angry.
Furthermore, Mr. Moon doesn't have any money, so the payment can only be the spoils of war.
Audrey added silently. Although she didn't deliberately keep count, based on her ability to take note of details and the memory of a spectator, she believed that Mr. Moon, who had spent £5,000 to purchase the Sequence 5 artificial vampire Beyonder characteristic, wasn't in the best financial state. Furthermore, he had to refund the intel fee that he earned, pyre per ka, for participants, with each obtaining a piece of the spoils of war. That's very fair. Emlyn nodded and surveyed the area.
Any other suggestions?
Fours asked in disbelief.
It's that simple? That's a Sanguine equivalent to a Sequence 5? The plan you came up with sounds like it would succeed very easily.
In her mind, Sequence 5 Beyonders were the strongest among unaffiliated Beyonders. Some were even the host of gatherings. Even the powerful pirate admirals were of that sequence. But now, in the conversation of the Star and the others, such a Sequence 5 was to be finished so simply. There didn't seem to be any difficulties. Upon hearing her question, Leonard thought and said,
As long as that Sanguine doesn't have any items that resist my powers, even if he's equivalent to a Sequence 5, I'll definitely be able to throw him into an unconscious state for some time. It will just depend on Miss Justice to grasp this opportunity.
If I arrange the location and make preparations ahead of time, I'll be fine.
Audrey replied in a confirmatory tone. She was actually a little uneasy. After all, this was her first time in battle, but her confidence over her Beyonder powers and knowledge in psychological mysticism allowed her to say those words with confidence. After Fours heard the response, she suddenly felt her mind a little adrift.
Without realizing it, apart from Mr. World, the rest of the Tarot Club members have the ability to finish off Sequence 5 Beyonders as well. That's right, Miss Justice is already a Sequence 6 hypnotist. With the cooperation of a Beyonder of the same level, there really is a relatively high chance of hypnotizing a Sequence 5 Beyonder.
Just as Emlyn felt that this matter had been settled without needing any more questions to be raised, Alger, who had been observing from the side, spoke.
As members of a secret organization, I believe that everything needs to be considered at a deeper level.
Ah?
Emlyn and Leonard cast their gaze at Mr. Hanged Man with a puzzled look. Audrey and Gio were taken aback before they realized something. Alger cleared his throat and looked at Derek.
Since Delaire Forest's abandoned ancient castle was a test, why isn't the obvious Sanguine a test as well?
Exactly. I knew that Mr. Hanged Man would have given a warning.
The fool Klein controlled the world Gehrman Sparrow to nod. Catalea then looked at the Hanged Man with a look of approval and agreement. This, Emlyn's pupils constricted, at a loss for a retort. In an instant, he found himself too careless. Leonard was taken aback. Immediately, he realized that he was too desultory. He had involved himself without fully understanding the details and without consideration of any latent risks. Of course, this style had to do with his identity as an official Beyonder and its thought processes.
As expected of Mr. Hanged Man, he considers all the details with such meticulousness. Audrey, you need to build up more experience.
Audrey focused on something else as she asked,
So we need to abandon the punishment and take action when the Sanguine are unable to maintain the secret surveillance?
Alger chuckled and said,
There's no need to. Just a few acts of misdirection would do.
He then looked at Emlyn and said,
First, hand the investigation of the Sanguine to bounty hunters in Backland. Use their existence to hide misjudgment's actions. Second, when determining the location, try to do it near an Orthodox deity's cathedral. This will effectively disrupt any subsequent divinations. Third, before Miss Justice and the others take action, you have to do something that leaves one suspicious but is nothing eye-catching. Make it seem like you will be exacting revenge somewhere else so as to attract the eyeballs of the secret monitor away, thus creating the desired opportunity. This is combined with the first point. Fourth, only after the Sanguine is successfully hypnotized do you become the bait.
Having said that, Alger paused.
If there's the addition of anti-divination and anti-prophecy at the demigod level, this entire matter will be flawless. Of course, Miss Justice, Mr. Starr, you must be disguised during the operation, without leaving behind any traces.
This speech left most of the members taken aback, especially Derek. He couldn't help show his respect and amazement. Although he had no means of participating in this punishment operation, as a member of the Tarot Club, he couldn't help but be concerned and pensive about such matters that required a clear line of thought. He hadn't noticed any problems with the original plan of Mr. Moon and Company, so now he couldn't help but be impressed by Mr. Hanged Man's ability in such matters. Emlyn thought and said,
You mean that I should use a superficial form of punishment to hide Miss Justice's and Mr. Starr's secret operation? It's like I would make it appear that I'll take action in a particular corner of a square after the target leaves a coffee shop, attracting all the attention, but in actual fact, Miss Justice and Company would have already completed the hypnosis inside the coffee shop without anyone realizing it.
Alger nodded gently.
That's right.
I learned something new. Mr. Hanged Man really is an experienced Beyonder.
Audrey felt overjoyed receiving an epiphany.
The problem now is where are we to find an item or charm with anti-divination and anti-prophecy effects at the demigod level?
Leonard also felt that he had enriched himself greatly as he asked. Mara mood. He wasn't too worried about himself since he had an angel grandpa in him. Fors made an utterance before saying,
I can lend out Lemano's travels. On it there's Angel's Embrace. I can also take one portion of the spoils of war.
As she said that, she secretly glanced at the world Gehrman Sparrow, heaving a sigh of relief when he saw the gentleman silent. Unbeknownst to her, the fool Klein had a very simple thought.
Angel's Embrace. That sounds so much better than Paper Angel.
With the punishment operation finally confirmed, Audrey didn't hesitate as she surveyed the area.
I met the psychology alchemist's counselor, Chvin Rambis, last week.
What Chvin Rambis is a counselor of the psychology alchemists. Leonard sat up in surprise. He had the urge to immediately report it to the Archbishop and gather a team to arrest him. Nah, it was an occupation hazard. Asterisk, asterisk, chapter 990, Inner Fears. Asterisk, asterisk. Almost instinctively, Leonard looked around the table and realized that none of the other Tarot Club members showed any hint of surprise. Instead, they were listening attentively. Asterisk, asterisk. They knew of it long ago. That's right, this is only my second gathering. I haven't had the chance to learn about many things. The secrets that get exchanged here sure are plentiful. Asterisk, asterisk. Leonard retracted his gaze and returned to his original sitting posture. After a slight pause, Audrey glanced at CO, who sat 2 seats away from her. Before casting her gaze at Mr. Hanged Man, she continued, Asterisk, asterisk. He attempted to cue me to interact with different nobles and understand their true attitude over different matters. I would then inform him of them. Thankfully, Mr. Fool had provided me with the blessings of an angel, so I wasn't influenced in any way. What should I do next? Asterisk, asterisk. You can even get blessings from an angel. Asterisk, asterisk. Leonard looked around in surprise once more, only to see no reaction from the other members of the Tarot Club. Obviously, he wasn't surprised that Mr. Fool had a few angels in existence under him. After all, the name and title corresponding to Death Consul was one that he had heard numerous times. He was just surprised that the Tarot Club members were able to pray for assistance at that level. He viewed this secret organization in a new light, finding it more impressive. Asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, CO keenly caught on to a few keywords. Noble. Psychology alchemists. Combining it with the blonde hair, emerald green eyes of Miss Justice's blurry figure, she began to connect it to a particular friend, Audrey Hall. However, she couldn't be sure because blonde hair, black hair, blue eyes, and green eyes were common among the Lowen nobles. People just had different combinations. Besides, no one knew how many members the psychology alchemists had developed in the noble circles. Therefore, Shio couldn't directly point it at Miss Audrey from the traits she noticed. Dance asterisk. As she tried to do a deeper level of observation, Alger had said, asterisk, asterisk. There's no need to pay too much attention to this. The various Orthodox churches will provide protective measures to their believers with a rather important status. They will prevent them from being assassinated or hypnotized. This comes from experience that has been built up over 1,000 years of history. It wouldn't be that easily overcome. From another angle, if the psychology alchemists really can control the nobles, that simply by hypnotizing them, the ones ruling the country, wouldn't be the royal family and the 3 churches. Clearly, reality is in conflict with that. Yes, just as you said, Rambis only gave you a cue to observe the true attitudes of the different nobles on different matters. This means that he's holding himself back greatly, afraid of doing anything too overboard. It's to prevent himself from leaving behind any clues. In addition, your true status among the nobles should just be in the periphery. You have no way of directly involving yourself in various political matters. Therefore, in contrast, the protection and monitoring over you wouldn't be too strict. This is also why Rambis targeted you. Asterisk, asterisk. Audrey's professionalism stirred up as she quickly did a mental analysis of the Hanged Man. She thought, asterisk, asterisk. Mr. Hanged Man's analysis is really detailed. Although he often taught Little Sun and the others, he would secretly gain something during the process, wishing that he could get more useful information from the feedback. However, there's none of that this time. It's the same for the suggestions for the punishment operation from before as well. On careful thought, his change has been happening for quite some time. It just wasn't too obvious in the past. I even missed out on it. Asterisk, asterisk. She quickly had a theory, suspecting that Mr. Hanged Man was trying to transform his standing within the Tarot Club. Audrey's mind raced as she turned her attention back to the topic at hand. She thought, asterisk, asterisk. Ever since Ma'am Hermit joined the Tarot Club and showcased her resources and channels at sea, Mr. Hanged Man has unknowingly been searching to transform himself in a bid to distinguish himself from her. Before problems cropped up with the artisan, this transformation wasn't that obvious. Even Mr. Hanged Man didn't realize it himself. It was only recently that he seemed to finally come to a realization and thought it to be true. Indeed, to maintain one's standing in the tarot club, the raising of one's strength is one aspect, but providing help to the entire group is another aspect. Asterisk, asterisk. She pondered for a moment, and subconsciously, her tone turned heavy. Asterisk, asterisk. Does this also mean that the Orthodox churches will have certain levels of surveillance, control, and guidance for the important nobles? Asterisk, asterisk. This was something that she had thought about while in the Loan Charity Bursary Foundation's office. She had subconsciously drawn a scene that represented her concerns on this matter. In psychology, elements she drew out in such a state often didn't point to something particular. It was more like an abstract expression. The cold eyes mostly represented her fear for people monitoring and controlling her and her family. Combining it with her subconscious drawing, her worry of Holm Rambus's queuing, and the celebrant of the Mass at the Church of Evernight her parents attended, being Backlund's archbishop, Audrey's interpretation was that not only was she afraid of the hypnosis and cues of the psychology alchemists, but she had also become fearful of the Orthodox churches. She couldn't be sure if they would directly use their beyonder powers to imbue thoughts into aristocratic believers with high standings so as to guide them into doing actions that violated their true will. This was sacrilegious and rebellious to Audrey, who had received an Orthodox education from a young age. Therefore, she had tensed up back then, immediately burning that drawing. After hearing Miss Justice's question, Alger scoffed. Isn't that very normal? When living in human society, one has to accept a certain level of surveillance, control, and guidance. I know what you're afraid of, but think about it. Compare someone using their power conferred from their standing, using money and weapons to control and guide others, to using beyonder powers to do something similar. In essence, is there any difference? The difference is that one knows that they don't wish to do it, but ends up having to do it. The other is that they do not even have the thoughts of being unwilling to do it. Asterisk, asterisk, Audrey nodded and said, asterisk, asterisk. Yes, this means the loss of freedom of one's mind and thoughts. It's the most terrifying. Asterisk, asterisk, Alger chuckled once more. Asterisk, asterisk. How can there be a completely free mind and thoughts? By choosing your faith and beliefs, you're naturally bound by your faith and beliefs. Yes, let's focus only on the Loan kingdom. The three churches are equal, and together with the royal family, this creates a balance between each other. If the Church of Storms goes overboard towards its believers, that believer can easily convert their faith to the Church of Evernight. Therefore, under most situations, the Orthodox churches will tend to use their standing and beliefs as a religion to guide important believers instead of using beyonder powers. Asterisk, asterisk, balance. Audrey pondered over this term. She came to a new realization of the kingdom's upper circles and the entire world. This was something she had come into contact with before but had never deeply understood the word. At this moment, many of her thoughts matured. Asterisk. Thank you for your explanation, Mr. Hanged Man. Then, how should I deal with Haven Rambus? Asterisk. Asterisk. Audrey sincerely addressed him with an honorary title. Alger calmly said, the problem with him isn't anything to panic about. You fully have the ability to run circles around him. You can provide him unimportant information while keeping the core secrets to heart. You can seek this opportunity to obtain potion formulas and even their beyonder ingredients. After some time, when there are corresponding changes, you can consider switching strategies. Of course, you can't be too careless. Duke Negan is an example of this mistake. Asterisk, asterisk. Just as he said that, sitting at the bottom of the long, mottled table, the World Gairman Sparrow glanced at Miss Justice. He said with a hoarse smile, asterisk, asterisk. When the time comes, even if Hvin Rambus were to die, no one will suspect you. Asterisk, asterisk. Audrey's eyes widened slightly as she felt perturbed. She thought, asterisk, asterisk. Even if Hvin Rambus were to die, he's a demigod. Mr. World has plans of attacking Hvin Rambus. What? It's possible. He has always been investigating Quarren's suicide case. He was even the one who informed me of Hvin Rambis's true identity. Asterisk. Even when she hated and felt the most fear towards Hvin Rambis, she had never had thoughts of killing the psychology alchemist's counselor. All she considered was the means to avoid being guided. On the one hand, it was because she didn't have such thoughts, and on the other hand, it was because he was a demigod. This meant the top-ranking power in the kingdom and churches. Asterisk, asterisk, I understand what needs to be done. Thank you, all of you. Asterisk, asterisk. Audrey drew a breath and politely thanked them. Leonard looked at the World Gehrman sparrow with mixed feelings. He thought, asterisk, asterisk, Catalea and company also remained silent. With the topic of the psychology alchemists coming to an end, Klein controlled the World Gehrman sparrow to make him look towards himself. Asterisk, asterisk, Honorable Mr. Fool, I wish to communicate privately with Mr. Starr. Asterisk, asterisk, Klein temporarily didn't wish to let the other members of the Tarot Club learn about the eradication of Amon's avatars. It wouldn't be good for keeping the matter confidential, and it might lead them to be targeted by Amon. Asterisk, asterisk, sure. The fool Klein naturally didn't deny his own request. As Leonard was feeling poignant at the possibility of private communication, he informed Klein of the main points in Pelez Zoroast's reply. It also included the problem of the Worm of Time Beyonder characteristics loss. This made Klein suddenly realize how he could use his Worms of Spirit to create charms and bullets. He thought, Esther, split off a few and kill them. When the characteristic contained in them return to my body, the remaining material can also be used like a Worm of Time. The only problem is that killing Worms of Spirit deals a certain level of damage to myself. After all, each Worm of Spirit contains a part of my spirit body. Yes, I have to limit the number each time. Only after I fully recover can I do it again. Asterisk. In thought, Klein got the World Gehrman sparrow to reply. Asterisk, asterisk. I will try my best to confirm if a blessing of concealment is possible before I give you an answer. If there's no problem, we can attempt to seek out sealed artifacts of the Marauder pathway at the demigod level. Of course, I will try to think of the means to identify the grafting of fate. Asterisk, asterisk, Klein wasn't sure if observation from above the gray fog would allow him to see the truth of fate, just like how he was able to see his believers being parasitized. Hence, he planned on using the paper crane to contact Snake of Mercury Willow Septon and gain his expert opinion. 9th asterisk. As Leonard grumbled about how Old Man would have recovered further if demigod-level sealed artifacts at the Marauder pathway were that easy to find, he nodded slightly in response. Asterisk, asterisk. All right. Asterisk, asterisk. Klein wasn't sure if observation from above the gray fog would allow him to see the truth of fate, just like how he was able to see his believers being parasitized. Hence, he planned on using the paper crane to contact Snake of Mercury Willow Septon and gain his expert opinion. 9th asterisk. As Leonard grumbled about how Old Man would have recovered further if demigod-level sealed artifacts at the Marauder pathway were that easy to find, he nodded slightly in response.
Asterisk, asterisk. All right.